We need to talk. That's how one would start a video if they were actually aiming for clickbait, wanting to benefit from a larger channel somehow. I don't start like that. I say hello, greetings, and thank you for tuning in, and it's nice to have you with me. That's how I always greet you viewers in these videos. This video is actually about another channel, or rather, about a brand new video that was released today. Is that how you say it? Yes, a released video from this channel. It's about the channel Motoren Zimmer. It is, if I understood correctly, a channel specialized in mechanical restoration, primarily of AMG engines, so not a car care channel. This is a car care channel. If you have landed here from the Motoren Zimmer community, I would like to warmly welcome you. This is a car care channel, currently the largest and most relevant active car care channel in the German-speaking area on YouTube. We deal only and exclusively with car care, and that every day because at least one new video is released here on the channel every day. That means we have a slightly different perspective and a different lens when it comes to car care topics than perhaps Motoren Zimmer, which is more about mechanics and repairs. Today, a very exciting video has been released, in short, about wheel cleaning and how you can also damage a lot with wheel cleaning. And I will summarize the conclusion of this video right at the beginning, because this will not be a critique video, this will not be a hate video, this will not be a cry for attention, because overall I absolutely agree with the Motoren Zimmer channel. The video that was released today on the Motoren Zimmer channel was really good because there were a few things that we here on this channel mention far too rarely, as we are somewhat caught up in testing these constantly newly released products. But there were important things mentioned there, and as I said, overall I absolutely agree with that. We'll briefly go through this video. And to avoid risking a copyright strike or the video being blocked in any way, we won't be showing any scenes from this video. However, we will link the video below so you can watch it again. So, as mentioned, the main statement is that you can also damage a lot with wheel cleaners. Now, from the very beginning, a distinction was made in this video, and I found that very good between the case of going through a car wash, which is still what the majority of drivers do, and the case of washing it yourself and going to the self-service box. That is also an important distinction, and we'll get to why shortly. In the case of going to the car wash, it was mentioned that usually, as part of the pre-cleaning, something is sprayed onto the rim. And then, that was the critical point, you are asked by the car wash employee to move forward. And that certainly carries the risk that the cleaner being sprayed lands not only on the rim, where it is supposed to go, but also on the brake disc, properly wetting the brake disc. And when you then roll forward, you spread the cleaner that was applied around on the brake disc, and it also ends up on the brake pads. And that was basically a good point. The point that I am personally not quite sure about is the following. If I am correctly informed, then in car washes, a rim cleaner with an active ingredient indicator is usually not used. These are the rim cleaners that trigger this ion reaction and then change color to red, purple, or pink, but usually highly alkaline. So-called wheel and tire cleaners are used, meaning rim and tire cleaners. Why? Because rim cleaners with active ingredient indicators are comparatively expensive, as they are usually not available or only very rarely as concentrates, and concentrates are what car washes like to use because they are cost effective. And so one must say, this risk of having something sprayed on and then driving on, which could attack the brake pads and brake discs, is somewhat reduced in my view because a different type of rim cleaner is used in car washes. That is so. One could call it a point of criticism, but it doesn't change anything. Even highly alkaline agents, when used there, are not necessarily always the best things to come into contact with metals. I am talking about unpainted, unprotected metals. Therefore, this point can certainly be left as it is. When it came to the self-service box, it was shown and said in the video that one usually goes and sprays the entire wheel broadly and generously. And I believe that is correct. Each of us does that. And each of us has also noticed that a bit, sometimes even quite a lot, of the rim cleaner ends up on the brake disc and also on the brake caliper. Some of us also consciously spray the brake caliper a bit because there is still dirt on it, and it discolors relatively quickly and strongly. And one must say, yes, that is a point that I will address at the end of the video. Where Motoren Zimmer is completely right, this is not necessarily good for the brake discs and especially for the brake pads. Especially if one would continue driving, particularly if one does not rinse off thoroughly. And that is so, I completely agree with what was said, that is not good for the brake calipers. What was also said, and I found it an extremely good point, is that you can already tell that Motoren Zimmer has at least somewhat engaged with car care. The point about pre-washing was mentioned, that many go ahead, spray the wheel, and then start brushing, which contradicts the principles of gentle, sustainable car care that we celebrate and show you here on this channel, absolutely 100%. Ideally, and this applies to wheels just as much as to your paint and all other surfaces, you should first remove as much dirt as possible using just the high-pressure cleaner. You can further support this with chemicals, but just by pre-washing the car and the wheels with the high-pressure cleaner, a lot of dirt is removed. And afterwards, any mechanical treatment, whether with a wheel brush, a paintbrush, or a wash mitt, is definitely safer for the paint surface because we have a significantly lower risk of scratches. I found it extremely good that this point was mentioned. To somewhat prevent this, meaning that the brake discs and brake pads are misted with a strong wheel cleaner with an active indicator, a tip was presented to set the spray jet, if possible, to a stream and not to the misting function, as this does not work with all spray bottles. I have to say that first of all, it depends very much on whether the respective spray head of the bottle can do that. Secondly, it also depends a bit on the consistency of the wheel cleaner, because some wheel cleaners, especially those from Sonax, are actually set up so that you only have a spray function. But the jet is still relatively concentrated and not very finely misted, but does not come out in a very thin stream. And for me personally, that is actually the best consistency and the best spray function you can have because you can work very precisely even with thin spokes. And since it is not misted over a large area, there is also no risk that the wheel cleaner is misted so finely that if there is wind at the self-service box, it all comes back at you. However, you still have good coverage because as shown in the video, and this is a criticism I have, if you set a very thin jet, you will consume a lot of wheel cleaner. Because just when you have, let's say, a thick spoke on the wheel, it is difficult to fully wet it with wheel cleaner if you only have a thin jet. And it should also be mentioned, as seen in the video, that with this jet, the tire was partially hit, and wheel cleaners with an active indicator are not a good idea for tires, and it was still partially sprayed onto the brake disc, and then it was said to do it from a certain angle. Honestly, I think this is way too complicated for most of you out there because you will consume so much material. It will take an incredible amount of time to wet everything, and that's why I don't know what to make of the tip. It would make more sense if after doing the pre-wash, meaning rinsing with the high-pressure cleaner, I spray it into a brush or a wash mitt, not directly onto the wheel, and work on the wheel that way. Because I believe that minimizes the risk of anything landing on the brake disc and brake pads. I also noticed that then regarding both the car wash and the self-service box, it was pointed out. And I just want to say thank you, Motoren Zimmer, for mentioning that, because it is a point that is often forgotten. We also keep reminding on this channel, cool wheels. Don't come off the highway where you've just had a high-speed session with hot brakes and hot wheels to the self-service box and then spray your wheel cleaner on. This can really lead to material damage because the substances can burn in 2001, and it actually says on the back of every wheel cleaner, use only on cool surfaces. It helps a lot if you just drive into the self-service box when the items are hot and hold the high-pressure cleaner on them for a few minutes. It has a very strong cooling function, and you should definitely keep that in mind. So again, absolutely the right point mentioned in the video. Very, very, very good point. However, the one that is also a bit critical is that after washing, you should drive around and brake a few times to dry the brake discs in particular. Because this is a phenomenon in car care where we spend hours on wheel cleaning, then we drive home, park the car, haven't braked hard and often, and then you can already notice that the brake discs start to rust. You can prevent this by braking a few more times. However, this also inherently carries the risk that we put new brake dust onto the freshly cleaned discs. But to be honest, if you have problems with the car getting dirty again as soon as you drive away from the wash area, then you shouldn't even start with car care because that's a battle you can only lose. And one of the absolutely and undoubtedly best tips given, which I also completely and wholeheartedly agree with, is to wash the wheels separately and individually. If you've just finished changing the tires, take the wheels that have just come off the car, go to the wash area and wash the wheels separately without them being on the car, because then you logically have no risk of getting your wheel bolts, wheel carriers, brake discs, brake pads, brake calipers, or anything else wet with your cleaner of choice. So I completely agree with that. I wanted to mention one or two things at this point. This video from the engine room was mainly about the brake discs, brake calipers, and brake pads. There are more materials around the wheel area where the same issue would apply. Wheel bolts, wheel screws, wheel carriers, these are usually, I would say, bare metals that can be attacked over time when using such wheel cleaners, especially if you don't rinse thoroughly. This aspect of rinsing cleanly and thoroughly was mentioned in the video 2001. However, from my perspective, it was addressed too briefly and not emphatically enough for the topic that the video was actually about. Many problems that were addressed in this video can be prevented if you rinse thoroughly and carefully. And yes, that can mean that you really have to hold it clean for 1 to 2 minutes per rim until nothing comes out. Here's a specific tip from us to you. Rinse until no more foam is produced, because as long as foam is still coming out from somewhere, you know there are still cleaner residues present. And that's why it's actually always a good indicator that you should hold the pressure washer on until nothing comes out anymore. It is critical to note that in one scene where it was shown how Motoren Zimmer does the pre-cleaning, it was also seen how it was directed into the wheel arch. And I believe that it is now very specific to the car that was shown. If there is perhaps a lowering involved, then the distance between the tire and the wheel arch is not as large anymore. In my view, and for my taste, the pressure washer was handled too close to the tire. So I would say that depending on how much power this pressure washer has, you can definitely cause damage to the rim, but even more so to the tire. And I would personally be a bit more cautious when it comes to cleaning the wheel arch liners. As I said, it also depends on how large your rims are, and if you have a lowering, it becomes a bit more difficult. But just be a little careful with your tires. Don't get too close with the pressure washer. What was also a bit difficult in the video is that it compared the indicator effect of the rim cleaner on a rim that was pre-cleaned versus one that was not pre-cleaned. A front and a rear rim were compared. From a testing or comparison perspective, this is a bit difficult because the rear usually has less brake dust and significantly less brake dust than the front. But the main statement still stands, and it is absolutely correct. There is nothing to criticize or complain about. If you do a pre-cleaning, the active indicator will show much less because a lot of the brake dust, the loose brake dust, has already been removed by the pressure washer. Speaking of brake dust, there was a statement in the video that said, rim cleaners are designed to remove brake dust. Now, I don't know if that was a self-contained statement, whether that is actually the opinion of the engine room, or if it was simply a simplifying, shortening statement. Because factually speaking, a rim cleaner must be able to do a bit more than just remove brake dust. And we don't only have brake dust on our rims, the rims are the part of the car that is closest to the ground. We not only have brake dust there, but also all the road dirt that gets stirred up. And that's why a rim cleaner must be able to do more than just remove brake dust. I wanted to emphasize that at this point. However, that leads me to the next point. I would have liked it if the video from the engine room had addressed that specifically. It was only briefly mentioned in one place, namely that it was said, depending on the rim cleaner, it varies. And that is an important point because there are different types of rim cleaners. There are those, and that was the focus of this video, with a working indicator. That means these are the ones you spray on, where this color change occurs. This is due to the ingredient inside that reacts with the metal particles in the brake dust, creating this color change, which is a visual indicator for you that cleaning is taking place. It is also responsible for the cleaning performance itself. And it is also responsible for the fact that these rim cleaners all smell like rotten egg. That is one type of rim cleaner. However, we also have those that do not contain this active ingredient. On one hand, there are strong acidic rim cleaners. Their pH value is really around 0, 1, or 2. They are primarily intended for extreme cases, where we are mainly dealing with baked-on brake dust, 2001. On the other hand, we have mildly or strongly alkaline rim cleaners. As mentioned, these are often the ones found in car washes that are used for tire and rim cleaning. Their strength lies particularly in the pre-cleaning, as they primarily attack road dirt. And a very nice option to use less of these expensive rim cleaners with a pH indicator would be to first use an alkaline pre-cleaner or rim cleaner, spray it on, let it work for a short time, rinse it off, which removes the majority of the road dirt. And only then do you spray the rim again, specifically with the rim cleaner with a pH indicator to tackle the last bit of brake dust that is still on it. And another option is to simply use a pH neutral car shampoo and combine it with a wash mitt or a rim brush. That works too. It usually works very well. I would have liked a bit more precision in the video, which also addressed these other alternative methods of rim cleaning. At one point in the video, it was also said that the enthusiasts always clean their rims with just a splash of dishwashing liquid water. Tip for you, I would not use dish soap. There are good reasons why there are car shampoos. So at least use a good pH neutral car shampoo. 1 point. I am less sure about was the statement in the video that when you have foamed the car, you should not use the shine rinse program, because you can't rinse the foam off the car properly, as you need hard water for that. I am a bit unsure about that. I believe the problem with the shine rinse is actually much more that there are often additives in the shine rinse. These can be sealing components or waxes. But these are mostly and above all drying aids, so some kind of silicones, polymers, or whatever else is in there. And that can, in the worst case, trigger an unpleasant side reaction in combination with the foam. But you can usually rinse the foam off with the shine rinse program. Whether it works significantly better with a normal rinse program, I would have to try out. But I believe the problem with the shine rinse is much more about these additives that are in it than not being able to rinse off the foam. But on the other hand, that was also such a tiny detail in the video that I honestly don't want to dwell on it too much. What I found a bit more interesting was a very brief statement in the video. It was said that we did not use a rim cleaner from Sonax, period. I know that I don't want to put anything in the mouth of the engine room at this point. I can only tell you what impression it made on me. Namely, that one wanted to say that the Sonax rim cleaners, although they are very popular in Germany, are actually not that good. Or, because this video was mainly about damage to brakes and brake pads, that the Sonax rim cleaners cause that. As I said, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but that is the impression it made on me. If that was the statement, then I consider it bold, because I can say with a clear conscience that there is probably no other car care product manufacturer besides Sonax, or only very, very few, that invest and test as much in the topic of material compatibility as Sonax does. And that's why I found the statement a bit. Let's put it this way. Due to the fact that a rim cleaner from dope fibers was used and promoted later in the video, this point left a bit of a bad aftertaste for me. But as I said, it could also simply have meant that they did not use a rim cleaner from Sonax to actually say the opposite, to avoid giving the impression that especially Sonax rim cleaners cause that, or that only Sonax rim cleaners cause that. So it could also have been exactly the opposite. That's why I just wanted to mention it at this point, because it just, yes, that one statement in the video seemed almost a bit out of place without going into it further. Maybe that could have been done. Simply explaining why that was said at this point would have been better, I believe. Otherwise. And with that, we come to the conclusion of the video, or my conclusion of the video from Motoren Zimmer. And at the same time, to the conclusion of this video. That's how it is. Overall, I have to say, I completely agree with 90% of what was said in the video. In particular, I found it good that it was pointed out that rim cleaners, parentheses with indicator, parentheses close, may not be the best option for regularly cleaning your rims. We always say that on this channel as well. It doesn't always have to be the rim cleaner with an indicator. You can also take a pH neutral car shampoo in a bucket, a rim brush, and a wash mitt, and you can wash your rims very well with it if you have done a proper pre-cleaning. Because I really like that it was shown, using the example of a brake disc and brake pads, what these rim cleaners with an indicator can do to such surfaces. That's just how it is, especially if you don't rinse it off properly. That's why I really like the point in the video. What I also liked very much is that these safety instructions were given stating that you should only use the cleaners on cool surfaces. You should rinse it off properly and ideally perform a proper pre-wash. This means removing the coarse dirt first before touching a rim. So the video gets a big thumbs up from me, and then the statement that it's best to clean the rims when they are off the car, because you can then better access the inner sides of the rims. And also the note that before going to change the tires, you might want to at least briefly rinse them with a high pressure cleaner, because it makes the work easier for the mechanic or the person changing the tires. I also found that to be a very good tip. So overall, a positive conclusion, a good video with some very important points in a community that doesn't primarily focus on car care. That's why we made this video. Some of you sent us this video and asked us to make a reaction video to it, and we of course wanted to fulfill that request for you. But I think some were hoping that this would somehow lead to drama or a scandal or something else. And I have to say, no, I agree 100% with 90%, 95% of what was said in the video. There were a few tiny points of criticism, though not even criticism points, I would call them clarifications that I wanted to address in this video. But overall, I have to say, Motoren Zimmer did a good job. Good video. If this video was helpful, informative, exciting, and interesting for you, feel free to give us a thumbs up. Also, support the channel with a free subscription and tune in for the next video. Bye.